News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KBNU.
KBNU News Time is 4:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Northern Steel Buildings. On KBNU's For the People program on Monday, Cache County Executive David Zook was here for the monthly county hour, and he thanked the public for their continued support in the recent election season as he and three other countywide officials all ran unopposed. As far as the recent session of the Utah legislature is concerned, Zook is happy with passage of a new law that will strengthen sentencing for those convicted of child pornography, an issue he feels strongly about.
If you're manufacturing it or you're distributing it, it can be you can be charged now with a first-degree felony, which comes with a much tougher penalty. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot more work that needs to be done.
At a meeting held with law enforcement officials along with the Maloof Foundation that fights child exploitation, it was said by some attendees that toughening the penalty was not going to be easy.
After that meeting, I went to Senator Chris Wilson, and I said, Senator Wilson, we had this meeting. We've identified this problem. Will you help us? Will you run a bill to do this? It took him about 2 seconds to say, absolutely. I will totally run that bill. I will make it my top priority. And he did.
Zook said the next law he would like to try to toughen is when someone is convicted of enticing a minor over the internet. He said in a recent case, the perpetrator was sentenced to probation. KBNU News Time is 4:06. KBNU weather for tonight, cloudy, rain showers likely this evening, then a chance of rain after midnight. Overnight low towards the morning, right around 30 degrees, and then mostly cloudy, mid-40s on Wednesday, sunny and lower 40s on Thursday. It's been to 52. It's 52 degrees right now at KBNU. KBNU weather brought to you by Berenson Caldwell. When the bills from your accident pile up, it's time for you to consider professional legal advice. It's time for you to get the Berenson Caldwell. Visit berensonlaw.com.
The planet Earth has been rotating around the sun for 4.5 billion years. Since the dawn of man, we have been crafting and refining tools to dig into the Earth's surface.
Me dig. Me dig.
But it wasn't until today that digging could be so much fun.
Me digging this.
Northern Steel Buildings will dig for you. Have them build you a hay barn, shop, warehouse, or if it's time to expand your business with a new facility, they'll move the earth around to make it happen. See their work online at northernsteelbuilding.com.
KBNU News Time is 4:07. 3 people are dead after 4 wrong-way crashes in the Salt Lake area over the weekend. The Utah Highway Patrol said there have been 43 wrong-way crashes so far in 2022, resulting in 7 deaths. Major Jeff Nyber said the UHP is seeing an increase in the calls they are getting about wrong-way drivers. He added that this year there have been 58 occurrences of a vehicle going the wrong way, which is a 49% increase from the same time last year. Nyber explained that the vast majority of the drivers that cause wrong-way fatal crashes are intoxicated, either on alcohol and or drugs, and they are significantly intoxicated. They don't know which direction they're going. Both UHP and UDOT have worked to prevent these kinds of crashes from happening. John Gleason, a UDOT spokesperson, said they have wrong way and do not enter signage posted on every freeway exit ramp. Several years ago, UDOT also began investing in wrong-way driver technology. Gleason explained that they have approximately 35 wrong-way driver detection cameras throughout the state that they're working to find wrong-way drivers. Gleason says once that happens, notifications come into their traffic center and all the operators are notified. He said messaging is sent out to let people know of a wrong-way driver, and both Highway Patrol and law enforcement are alerted right away. Police have asked for help from the public to identify the suspect in an armed robbery caught on surveillance cameras. KUTV reports the crime took place at a Metro by T-Mobile store. A male suspect armed with a firearm threatened an employee with the handgun while demanding cash from the store. The male wore a glove on his left hand during the robbery. South Salt Lake police described the suspect as a Hispanic man standing between 5'9" and 6'1" tall with thin build. The suspect was wearing a light blue and white winter beanie cap with the words "goal" or "goals" inscribed in green on the back of the hat, and the top of the beanie hat is green. The suspect in this case also matches the description of the suspect from a similar type of case in Salt Lake City. KVNU News Time is 4:10. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology is Cache Valley's most trusted name in hearing aids. Once again, you'll be able to hear a loved one's laughter and understand conversations. Schedule a free hearing evaluation with Dr. Paul Daines at Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. Call 753-4327. That's 753-HEAR. Or visit CacheHearing.com.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
This is Ty over at Chimney Fireplace. A lot of people hear our name and think we just sweep chimneys. While that is definitely our heritage, we specialize in providing the very best fireplaces and stoves to new and existing homes. We invite you to come see why Lopi Stoves lead the industry in performance and quality. With Fireplace Extraordinaire Fireplaces, we can bring any of your designs to life. From cozy and traditional to sleek and modern, come experience the warmth at Chimney Fireplace in Logan and Brigham City or online at chimchimney.com.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Steven.
Who said that?
Me, down here.
Ugh, what are you, a yellow booger?
I'm a banana slug, Steven.
What are you doing in my room?
I'm your sense of adventure. It's been a long time since we've had an adventure in the forest.
Mom took me to the forest last year.
I'm a slug, Steven. It took me a long time to get here.
You're right. I should get out.
Yeah, the forest is not that far away.
Hey, Mom!
Come to the forest where the more adventurous you lives. Check out discovertheforest.org for cool places nearby. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
For the people.
We are waiting with bated breath for news from the Cache Republican Party meeting an executive committee tonight.
With Jason Williams.
And I'm really excited about this next segment. We have two guests here in studio. We're going to talk about something that we've talked about many times here on the show, but from a bit of a different angle.
Weekday afternoons from 4 till 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. It is hour one of today's show, Tuesday, March 15th. Hope everybody's doing well out there. I'm Jason Williams. Bill Walter here in the studio as well. We have some controversy over a Utah State Senator and a video he's sharing. He also happens to be a Utah State University employee, so there is a local angle to this brouhaha. We'll talk about that later on, what the video is all about and why people are not happy that an elected official is sharing this. That's coming up later on in the hour. A touching story about a family, or a couple rather, a retired couple, family still, because their kids are coming from out of state to join them on this trip, that used the Cache Visitors Bureau app to plan an entire family vacation that they had intended to be multi-state, Utah, Wyoming, and Idaho.
after fiddling around a bit with the Cache Visitors Bureau app, they've decided to spend their entire 4-day family trip weekend in Cache Valley. But the reason for that and the way the app plays into that is a cool story. So we'll be getting to that later on as well. An update from senators from here in northern Utah. Both Senator Chris Wilson and Senator Scott Sandel discussed two things that this requires a little background. So during the legislative session, there's official action, and then there is the fact that you have lawmakers on Capitol Hill for 45 days forced to interact with each other a lot, and they get talking, and they have ideas. And one of these discussions produced something that will be an official committee, a committee tasked with actually mapping out both coverage areas and speed areas of broadband here in Utah to decide where some federal funds are going to be spent to expand broadband here in Utah. The second will be an informal action, meaning no official committee or task force will be created, but they said it will be a task force style group, a caucus, if you will, of lawmakers from here in northern Utah, from other parts of the state, to take a look at existing water plans in their local areas, compare notes and contrast ideas, and then push for an update of sorts, if necessary, to water plans. Senator Sandel said this came about after discussing with other lawmakers the fact that they had, in some places, 30, 40-year-old water plans. The state is about to get, my words, not Senator Sandel's, although I think he'd probably agree with me, but the state is about to get pretty heavy-handed with water development. You saw hints of it this year. You're going to see it outright next year, and the year after, and the year after, every legislative session. And by heavy-handed, what I mean is the state is going to start directing a lot more of the water development. So the concern here is that if the state is saying, well, okay, the Salt Lake Valley needs more water. Who has extra water? Oh, the Bear River region right now has extra water. Well, their master plan says they have oodles of extra water, which ours does, and so we'll take it. Senator Sandel's concern is that no one really knows. These plans are old, last updated in the 90s here in northern Utah at least, worse in other places of the state, southern Utah in fact. And he said, if we're going to go to bat for the water and say, no, the state's taking too much or too little, we need to know what we're actually working with in the first place. And he said a similarity between this issue with broadband expansion exists with water. There are some areas where we don't really know. In southern Utah, in the Colorado River debate over that Lake Powell pipeline and things like that, the data they're using there is more than 100 years old. And one University of New Mexico professor who we had here on the show as a guest a couple of years ago says the data is bad, that it was developed after two of the wettest years on record before or since. And so they're working with bad data as a very foundation. That could well be the case here in northern Utah now. Considering the fact that populations have grown, climate change has changed things a bit. We've also seen water development in a hodgepodge kind of way over the last 100-plus years. So we might not know how much water there is actually out there. This informal work group of lawmakers plans to tackle that, working with local water districts and water managers. They hope to basically fill out the necessary information and get a good idea of what water is actually out there. Both Senator Sandel and Senator Wilson spoke to both of these respective committees, both facing that initial challenge of, is our foundational information even valid? We'll have that audio for you coming up later on in the show today. I also wanted to highlight this just a bit. This was just a touching story, and it came late, so I'm kind of scrambling now to see if we can actually bring them onto the show today, but it is likely going to be a future show. But this was an email that was sent to us by a listener. Now, to be clear, this listener is no stranger to Cache Valley. They asked that I do not use their first and last name because they don't want to accidentally show up here and be celebrities, which I get. But I'll just say they did allow me to say this. This is a family that spent their entire lives here in Cache Valley until retirement and have since, due to some health conditions, lived in another state with a lower elevation. But they decided that they were going to make a trip this year with their adult kids joining them and all the grandchildren as well. And they were going to make their way, spend some time here in Cache Valley, and then head up north through Idaho, some parts of Wyoming, do some outback exploring on some of the Yellowstone trails and things like that, and then make their way back to Cache Valley and head home. Do this over a 4-day weekend. To begin planning the trip, they downloaded the Cache Visitors Bureau app just for fun. And they started planning with the app, and they kept planning with the app. And in the end, according to the email they sent in today, they decided they're spending their entire 4-day weekend here in Cache Valley. What they realized is that outside of Yellowstone and Jackson Hole, they could actually get to everything they wanted to get to in Idaho and in Wyoming, outside of, again, hitting that Old Faithful Lodge, which is a bit of a drive for a single day. They will be staying somewhere else that night, but every other night they'll be spending it here in Cache Valley because they realized it's less than an hour from everything. Growing up here, this is from the email, growing up in Cache Valley, I never realized this, or I did and took it for granted. But as I planned this trip with my family using the Cache Visitors Bureau app, travel times were reported to all of these destinations. So as we're going through making a list of all the places we plan to visit while visiting Cache Valley, after having not been there for more than 15 years, we realized, well, that's only 40 minutes from Cache Valley. We'll just stay there that night. Oh, this one's over 55 minutes from Cache Valley. We'll stay in Cache Valley again that night. And they realized that, again, something from the email, something we took for granted or never noticed while residents of Cache Valley for the majority of our lives before retiring, is that Cache Valley, according to the Visitors Bureau app, and thank you in parentheses, and thank you for that app, it saved us a lot of money and will keep us staying in Cache Valley, which feels kind of good. That app taught us that Cache Valley is less than or just a little bit more than an hour from almost everywhere that's worth seeing in the West. I thought that was a very cool email. Now, not everyone's going to agree with this, of course, because I know some places that are some of my favorite spots in the West are a bit more than an hour drive from here, but we are pretty close to some really cool stuff. And if you've been away for a while, or if you've never been here and you just want to get to know the area, some of the history of the West, some of the most beautiful scenery in the West, a lot of it is really just an hour from Cache Valley. Check it out. I've put some screenshots of the email with the first and last names of the family removed. They asked that I don't include those, though saying I could share the story and details about their lives. They asked that I not include their names because they don't want to arrive here this June and be celebrities. But it is a really cool story, and I posted some screenshots to their commentary on our Facebook page. I did reach out to the Cache Visitors Bureau to talk about that app and how they get the information into it that led to this family's decision to actually stay in Cache Valley for their entire getaway weekend. And hopefully we'll be able to get them on later on the show or tomorrow's show and find out where the idea for all this came from. We'll be back right after this.
If you think it's expensive to hire a professional, just wait until you hire an amateur.
Why the heck is the roof leaking? Larry, you said you got it fixed.
I thought it was fixed, Donna. Everything was fine until it started raining.
Larry, that's the point of fixing the roof, is so we can actually live here when it's stormy outside.
This is David with Roof Rescue. Our experienced roofing team is tried and true and will fix your roof guaranteed. Visit roofrescueusa.com to schedule your free roof inspection. Roof Rescue, providing watertight peace of mind.
You already know H&R Block does taxes, but you may not know you can get expert help in person or virtually, or that our tax pros average 10 years of experience. You can even request the same tax pro every year, and your biggest possible refund is always guaranteed. At H&R Block, help is here. All tax situations are different. Not everyone gets a refund. Limitations apply. See hrblock.com/guarantee.
Make your appointment with H&R Block in Logan by calling 752-1651. That's 752-1651, or download the H&R Block app. Proud to be locally owned and operated. H&R Block in Logan.
Hi, I'm news correspondent Bob Woodruff. In 2006, a roadside bomb struck the armored vehicle I was riding in while reporting from Iraq. I sustained a life-threatening traumatic brain injury. The military term "got your six" means I have your back, and that day our service members had mine. During my recovery, I learned firsthand the challenges facing our service members who return home with injuries. While serving, their fellow service members always had their six. Now that they're home, it is our turn. We started the Bob Woodruff Foundation to make sure that the camaraderie and support they relied on in the military carries on, and we need you. Please join us as part of the Got Your Six initiative and help us be there for impacted veteran service members and their families. They've had our backs. It's time we have theirs. Learn more at gotyoursix.org. That's gotyoursix.org, using the number 6.
Sad news. During the break, we got confirmation that Julie Hollis-Terrell won't be able to join us today, but that'll give us a chance to tell this whole story again tomorrow and see if she can join us here on the show. And Julie, thank you for trying. She's actually caught up in some important Visitors Bureau business at the state buildings in Salt Lake City, so that'll be on a future show. Also, something that had to be postponed today, but I'm going to promote it anyway because we'll be able to get to this on Thursday. But scheduling conflicts led to this not being a possibility today. But coming up later on this week, we're going to be speaking with a USU expert, Utah State University professor, an expert on geopolitical interaction. He's done some amazing research, and I've linked to a lot of it on our Facebook page. And as I understand it, he's working on a book as well. And the idea behind this, now this is my description, so this isn't really doing it justice, but if you consider what's going on in Ukraine and Russia with the Russian invasion of Ukraine and some of the geopolitics around that, like, for example, the proximity to a lot of other countries that are in NATO, the proximity to other countries that are either friendly or not friendly to Russia. You've, of course, got China in this whole mix as well. And as things change, as world events happen, power dynamics change. And it leads to some very unpredictable outcomes, to say the least. So we'll have a chance to talk with that from a person who is researching exactly that right here in our own backyard at Utah State University. So that's coming up on a future show. This is a comment from a listener. So we have a contrarian here, Bill. This is a listener said that so hearing the story at the first of the show there about the family coming to visit this summer and deciding to spend their entire 4-day weekend in Cache Valley because it's an hour from everything and it's a nice place to stay. I get this mentality. Listener emails in and said, that's a cool story. And I love that someone who once lived here is recognizing that. But can you imagine if Cache Valley became as popular as the Zion area, Zion National Park, and what it would be like in the canyons and on the trails and at Bear Lake every summer here? And I get it, yeah. I mean, there's so much economic activity around tourism in Utah that it's not something you can shut the door on, or it's not something you can smartly shut the door on anywhere, whether it's Garden City or Logan City, or Cache County or Rich County. But at the same time, yeah, it does. I've noticed the change. Now, a lot of this was the pandemic, of course, but I've noticed the change. There were places I used to run my dogs when I had a surprise-free afternoon or a nice warm Saturday morning that we wouldn't see another person or another dog for miles. And we go up there, I take the dogs, and they'd run and play, and now we see people. I don't mind this, as long as they're good, responsible dog owners that have, socialized their dogs and more, or if it's an on-leash trail. But at the same time, it is different. It's a noticeable difference. It's a bit harder. It's not impossible. Anybody who's lived here their whole lives, there's still plenty of places you can go for a short hike or a pretty view and not be around anyone else. We all know those places, right?
Well, and it's going to happen. I mean, aside from, like Cache Valley being a huge tourist attraction to people from the outside, I mean, the valley is growing. So people that have already moved here for work or whatever are going to discover these areas as well. So it's just going to get, prepare for it to get a little bit more crowded.
Yeah, it's going to. And I think it's... Now, I understand what the listener's saying here, that his concern is tourism specifically, but a lot of this crowding that we're noticing already, speaking specifically about trails and rivers and popular roadside destinations throughout Logan Canyon or Blacksmith Fork Canyon, I'm guessing the majority of that increased traffic is population growth, not tourism. Tourism is still pretty seasonal here in Cache Valley. At least the overnight weekend tourism type thing. There's a lot more of that in the 6 warm months of the year than in the 6 frigid months and snowy months of the year. Although, Beaver Mountain, for example, does attract tourists. There are people I know who come here and spend a night in a hotel so they can ski the beeve, but it's generally a summertime thing. And so it's seasonal. So the growth you're seeing on the trails, again, part of it was the pandemic. So we might see things shift, backwards a little bit, or maybe this is forwards, I don't know. And so you might see some of these trails be less populated again as people go back to the office, if they haven't already, and as people, move back to their favorite pastimes, if they haven't already. So that could be a part of it, the pandemic. But I do think population growth alone here in Cache Valley means that you're going to have to go a bit further into the canyons to find, if that's your goal, a quiet, isolated place to take a hike or take some photos or whatever it is you go to the canyons for, to fly fish. I spoke with some anglers recently about this, a lifelong fly fisherman who said that, he used to get up early and head to certain places and have a nice day and then do some fishing as he was about to leave late in the afternoon and could spend the whole day, never talk to another person. But he said that's impossible now. And in fact, he said he can't stand, he's a bit of a purist, but he can't stand to fish some of the regular fishing holes near the mouths of the canyon anymore in the summertime, because he said it's so crowded. You run into so many people, and not everyone knows the rules of courtesy and of smart fishing. So he said he himself has had to go, many more miles up the canyon to find spots to fly fish, and that's irritating for him, of course. I don't know how we get around this. There are jokes all the time of don't let the secrets of Cache Valley's beauty out. But at the same time, back to this story about, this family coming here, the email that was sent to us, them coming here and deciding to spend their whole weekend here in Cache Valley. Originally Cache Valley natives, that since retiring, they had to move to an area with lower elevation due to health concerns of one of the individuals. And they're coming out here with their adult children and grandkids this summer, and they were going to stay here one night and then take a bit of a tour up to Yellowstone and back down. They decided to spend their entire weekend, 4-day weekend, or 4 nights of a 5-day weekend, rather, here in Cache Valley, because it's, quote, an hour from everything, except Yellowstone. That's a bit longer of a drive. That night, they will be staying at the lodge. But still, it's a cool story, and it highlights what makes Cache Valley such a fun place to live, that we are, close to at least an hour from a lot of really great stuff. But that is going to draw people. And as the Wasatch Front gets more and more crowded, you're going to have more people who are willing or even interested intentionally of living in Cache Valley and working on the Wasatch Front, as you have more and more. I mean, think about this. If you've got 10 years down the road, there's some great high-tech job in Box Elder County, and it pays well, and it's something you plan to work at for a long time. But then you can live in, on the hillside in Mendon, or somewhere that's still nice and not too urban sprawly at the south end of the valley or the north end of the valley. Of course, people are going to say yes to that. And so we're going to see a lot of change. And I love this because originally I was just highlighting what I thought was a cool story, a touching story about a family planning their vacation with the Cache Visitors Bureau app and deciding to spend the whole weekend here in Cache Valley this upcoming June. But this is a great discussion because we are going to see change. How we meet that challenge, I think, is really the key part Do we plan for it? Are we careful about it? Are we making sure that we're just not building subdivision upon subdivision upon subdivision out into the nethers of the valley and then looking back and going, looks like Syracuse. Wish we hadn't done that. Hopefully we avoid those types of things and we build differently and we build smartly and we wrap our heads around higher density housing, especially in city centers and big population centers. Well, big for Cache Valley. So I think that's really kind of the point I'm always trying to make here on the show, that the change is coming and it's going to lead to some changes none of us like. I talked last week about these two big trees I used to watch hawks in as a kid as my parents drove us into Logan from Hiram, and those trees are gone as of 2 weeks ago, knocked down by a developer. Gigantic willow trees, always had hawks in them, and they're shredded. They're just shredded stumps on the side of the road now. I hate that. I really do. I wish they'd consulted with me. I wish they'd thought of a way to leave those there, and maybe they could have.
And I'm sure the Hawks aren't happy about it either.
Well, yeah, and we
go somewhere else.
We do have to think about that a little bit. This is part of Cache Valley's beauty, is the fact that a lot of Cache Valley is still pretty close to nature. We could undo that very quickly if we don't develop smartly, to where you're now having to drive up to Idaho to see a hawk or anything outside of a city squirrel. That is a possible future for Cache Valley. Do we want that? Some won't care, some will. I think we can avoid it with some careful planning. And so this all kind of comes full circle to that. And to some extent, being careful about the changes and not resisting them, but then at the same time, making sure they're not just willy-nilly and just happening because someone could make a quick buck here and there and nobody really thought it out. There's got to be some planning to this. Came a long way from the Cache Visitors Bureau app there in that conversation. But I love this. Appreciate the listener sending this in, because this is a serious public policy tie-in to what was originally, for me, just a touching story. If you'd like to weigh in, 753-5868. We'll be back right after this look at the news with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 4:37, and the news is brought to you by Mount Logan Laundry. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas says he's worried about efforts to politicize the court or add additional justices. He said it undermines the institution's credibility among young people. Thomas spoke this past Friday at an event in Utah hosted by former Republican U.S. Senator Orrin Hatch's foundation. He also blasted members of the media for scrutinizing his wife's conservative political activity. Thomas did not reference the future of Roe v. Wade, the landmark 1973 Supreme Court decision that extended abortion rights throughout the country. The court is set to rule this year on several hot-button political issues, including abortion, guns, and voting rights. A major Boise hospital was locked down for about an hour after far-right activist Ammon Bundy urged supporters to head there to protest a child protection case involving a family friend. St. Luke's Health System put the Boise Medical Center on lockdown and began diverting incoming patients at around 1:30 p.m. Bundy released videos earlier warning that if an acquaintance's young child was not returned to the family after a hearing, organizers he called patriot groups would take action. Bundy then asked people to swarm the hospital. The lockdown was lifted after police responded to the hospital, and several dozen protesters stuck mostly to sidewalks. And the Utah State Aggie men's basketball team back in action in the first round of the NIT as they host a game against the Oregon Ducks tonight in the Spectrum. Al Lewis will have game day at straight up 6 o'clock this evening with former Aggie great Jalen Moore joining him before and after the game. KVNU News Time is 4:39.
Have you pulled your spring sheets out of storage, and do they smell stale and need freshening up? How about your blankets and your quilts? Are things dingy from winter use? Well, go to Mount Logan Laundry. It takes no time at all to freshen everything up with their 55 and 80-pound washers and dryers, and it costs a lot less than the dry cleaners, and free Wi-Fi and drop-off service, too. Mount Logan Laundry really is the cleanest spot in town. Find them at 5th East and 9th North in Logan or in Brigham City on the corner of 1st East and 7th South.
KVNU weather for tonight. Mostly cloudy, rain showers developing this evening, then a chance of rain after midnight, low overnight around 30. Chance of precipitation 70%, and then mostly cloudy Wednesday, high temperature in the mid-40s. Sunny, lower 40s on Thursday. We've been into the low 50s today. 52 has been our high. It's 49 right now at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. Bring back the sounds you've been missing. Schedule a free hearing evaluation with Dr. Paul Daines at Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com. Let's check Wall Street now with Edward Jones.
Good afternoon. This is Raydell Gibbons bringing you the Daily Financial Markets Report on behalf of financial advisor Mike Arnold and Edward Jones for Tuesday, March 15th. Markets moved sharply higher today, with the S&P 500 up nearly 2% for the day. Equities are perhaps supported as oil prices continue their move lower, with the WTI down nearly 7% to $96 levels. Today, the Dow closed up 601 points at 33,546. The NASDAQ closed up 367 points to 12,949, and the S&P 500 closed up 90 points to 4,263. In the bond market, the 10-year Treasury yields are trading at 2.15% higher. The price of crude oil was down $7.42 at $95.59, and the price of gold was down $43 or $1,918.30. For stocks of local interest, Autoliv closed up 89 cents at 75.70. Chevron closed down $8.44 at 158.28. Dominion Energy is down 30 cents at 81.02. Home Depot is up $10.18 at $328.54. Kroger's up 77 cents at 56.19. Lowe's is up $4.56 at 231.07. McDonald's is up $6.39 at 232.57. Microsoft's up $10.71 at 287.15. Nucor is up $3.47 at 135.52. Philip Morris is up $3.07 at 92.66. And Walmart stores closed up $1.73 at $145.78. This has been today's financial market report. To you on behalf of Edward Jones, a member of the SIPC, and financial advisor Mike Arnold, serving individual investors with personalized attention and financial advice, located at 135 North Main, Suite 102 in downtown Logan. If you'd like additional information, please contact our branch office, phone number at 753-2915. Daily commentary is also located on our website at edwardjones.com.
Hi, Cache Valley. Mark Anderson with Anderson Seed and Garden. I enjoy giving advice about yard and garden care. In fact, some people even consider me their personal gardening Google. But now's the time for bare root plants. Great time for any kind of fruit tree like apples, pears, nectarines, or things like raspberry bushes, strawberries, grapes, onions, even blueberries. Anderson's is having their bare root sale right now. The bare root tree sale doesn't last long. Get the best selection before they're gone at Anderson Seed and Garden, 69 West Center in Logan.
Wednesday edition, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. We are rolling with all of you. Can't wait to hang out. A couple of great guests. Marty McCary, the doctor in charge of helping to handle everything in Virginia, and Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin.
Plus updates on the war in Ukraine. What is the Biden administration doing to help bring this to a close? We're going to have that coming up on the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Senators Scott Sandel and Chris Wilson, I guess we're here in Cache Valley, I should flip that. Senators Chris Wilson and Scott Sandel will be joining us via pre-recorded audio later on in the show. They both had a chance to discuss, as sort of a legislative debriefing, big plans when it comes to water and broadband infrastructure that are going to have, one way or another, these plans by the state are going to have an effect on northern Utah. So both senators have some concerns along those lines, and they have a plan for wrapping heads around this and making sure that my words, not theirs, the state doesn't walk all over Cache Valley as development happens, as water planning happens, as broadband expansion happens. They want to make sure Cache Valley is considered respectfully in all of this, especially water development. But, it does come up with broadband and more. And not just Cache Valley, but in the entirety of northern Utah, Box Elder and Rich County as well. So we'll hear what they had to say about one informal process, which will be just a group of lawmakers meeting in a working group style format over the summer. And public meetings will be scheduled for that to discuss water plans. And then, as far as broadband goes, an official formal committee was created during the legislative session, which Senator Chris Wilson will sit on alongside Senator Sandel, and they will be discussing broadband expansion, specifically where to best spend oodles of money. A lot of money from the last, it was ARPA, the last rescue plan passed in the first few months of the Biden administration. And then, of course, last fall, the big infrastructure bill passed. And between the two bills, it could be, upwards of $700 million that Utah has just at first, coming from the federal government to dedicate to building up that infrastructure. Broadband, of course, now an integral part of our economy. But the options for expanding broadband to places where it isn't great or doesn't even exist right now are huge. From people finding higher paying jobs through, normally Utah County-based tech companies to people working for the state and not having to live in Salt Lake City or Davis County to do it. So those options are not huge right now for certain areas, most of Rich County, for example, even large parts of Summit County. But expanding broadband could change that. Where do we need to build, though? That's the big question. And the state doesn't have good data. The only map the state has right now was self-reported by internet service providers who understandably have every reason to fudge a bit here and there and say, sure, speeds are great in this area. Sure, there's coverage here in this town. But we don't really know. And there is at least anecdotal evidence those maps are highly faulty. So the state wants to build an accurate map, and they're asking everyone in the state to be a part of this, starting out with a speed test. Go to speedtest.utah.gov, whether you're at home, at work, at a coffee shop, at a restaurant. If you're on a Wi-Fi or cabled connection, not your cell phone, but if you're on anything but your cell phone, they want you to run a speed test. It doesn't collect any personal information. It literally just tests the upload and download speed of the location and logs an IP address of that location. It'll help the state build a map so they can say, okay, in this area, the internet service providers are telling us X speeds are available, but we've had no one test and actually hit that speed. So there might be some need for investment there. They could also say, okay, on the map it says you can get broadband in this part of, say, Rich County, but no one can. So there might be some need for investment there. They have to decide where millions of dollars are going to go, and they, of course, want to spend it smartly. So we'll hear what Senator Wilson, who will be a big part of this upcoming official committee created by the legislature that will meet, and the first round of the funds start showing up here in Utah in May from those federal chunks of legislation, the rescue plan and the infrastructure bill again. So that's coming up. Speaking of the legislature, though, I'm not going to link to this. If you want to see it, you can find it. One of the reasons I'm not going to link to it is that I watched it when the state senator first posted it. And, even YouTube's algorithm knew what I was watching was not good content to be watching, and it started serving me up some weird stuff to match it. So I don't want to encourage anyone to actually do that and accidentally find themselves a few years from now radicalized by this one video. I'm exaggerating, but it also does happen. State Senator John Johnson, he is from Ogden. He represents the Senate district down there in Weber County. And he's new. I mean, he's not brand new. He was elected in not this last election, but the one before. And but it's his first term. He also is an employee of Utah State University in the business school up there. And he also runs a company which is sort of morphed into an online Facebook vlog called Politicket. You might have heard of that over the years. But Senator John Johnson posted a video to a documentary, he says at least, that he and Brandon Beckham, who you might have seen in the news recently being charged with felony sexual assault, made or funded. The video is called Identity Marxism, and this isn't a new term or phrase. And it's basically, in the end, pretty dang close to white supremacist propaganda, including former House Representative LeVar Christensen saying that studies of equity and race in schools are, quote, really just trying to separate white children from their families. That was actually a claim of the KKK when education first became an interest of the state, when states wanted to start funding education systems after the Great Depression. The KKK resisted using that exact claim that it was just a way to get white children away from their families. It was a bit odd to see a state senator sending this, sharing this, or in his claim at least is that he helped fund it. Either way, it's attracted a lot of attention today, and it does tie back not only to Utah State University, as Johnson is employed there, but also Weber State University. I had completely forgotten about this. But a man that shows up in the video, this quote-unquote documentary that the state senator claims he funded and is sharing around this week, it also tells the story, one I'd forgotten of. So I did some digging to see how this all ended, because I never found out. But it includes some brief appearances by a man named Michael Moreno. And if you don't recognize that name, this is a man that back in 2019 wanted a Weber State University debate teacher fired. He posted a bunch of videos that were awful, actually. And I was right there with him. If a professor actually said these things, fire that professor. They were clips, it turns out, from an actual discussion in a debate class. And Moreno was not honest in what he shared with the public. He was interviewed by every major media outlet here in Utah as a freshman at Weber State University in 2019, and it quickly came to light afterwards that the audio clips he shared were highly edited. What actually took place was in a debate class, a professor asking people, and if you've ever been in a debate class, this is very common, asking people to voluntarily take extreme or even absurd positions. And the goal behind this exercise in a debate class or in a debate club is to steel you to an absurd or an extremist opinion that you might have to debate against in a competition or in real life, if you're in the class for that purpose. Maybe you're headed into law or something like that. So it's an exercise that's pretty common in debate classes. But what Moreno did was took little clips of the professor saying controversial things without the context of him saying them as things people could choose to adopt as their fake opinion for that class period in order to be the person making the absurd or extremist argument for the others to argue against. Again, a common practice in debate classes. So an investigation began, and that was the result of the investigation. If you're curious whatever happened, Michael Moreno is now, I found out, a student at USU, not at Weber State University, and the professor at Weber State University is still employed there and teaching there today. He was interviewed recently by the Salt Lake Tribune and said that he regretted the whole experience, but was also more saddened that a student in a debate class felt hurt by what was happening in the class, because that was not his intention, obviously, but that also that was the point of being in a debate class in the first place. But the professor wished the student well anyway. Moreno makes an appearance in this video produced by Utah State Senator John Johnson, making the same claims, again, without the context that he highly edited the audio clips to make the professor look bad and apparently try and make himself a bit of a celebrity. So understandably, this video is getting a lot of attention today. Again, I won't link to it. If you want to watch it, you can find it. Senator John Johnson has tweeted it out on his own Twitter account, which is John for Utah. And you can find the link there as well. Again, Johnson saying today that he helped fund this documentary, quote unquote, which, again, sounds, I watched the thing, sounds a lot like uncomfortably close to some of the old Klan propaganda films. And says that it was co-funded by Brandon Beckham, who has been in the news recently, being charged with felony sexual assault. Strangely enough, Senator Johnson tweeted this out in defense of Beckham, saying, this man's being falsely accused. He helped me fund this documentary. I don't know if that's the defense Beckham wants or needs right now, and I'm not sure what Senator Johnson was thinking, but that is the big talk of the day on social media. So far, Senator Johnson has not responded, nor has Utah State University, though many have been asking, at least online. We'll keep you posted if any response comes to any of this, and we'll be back with more of KVN News for the People right after this.
This is Jay with Daryl's Appliance. What happens when an appliance breaks down and the cost of the repair is more than the appliance value? You're stuck with a service call charge at most places, not at Daryl's. With our exclusive Under One Roof loyalty program, we discount the service call diagnostic charge when you decide to buy new from us instead of the repair. That's the Daryl's difference, because service always comes first. Daryl's West on Airport Road, open until 6 p.m. on weekdays, 5 on Saturday.
Ultimate power, ultimate potential. Now everyone can discover that Ski-Doo feeling with the new 2023 Ski-Doo Deep Snow Sleds. Available with the all-new Rev Gen 5 platform and Turbo R engine, bringing you the best power-to-weight ratio in the game. Plus, discover a whole new range of models for every rider, including the new Summit Neo Plus, built ready for your first time. The only question we have, who's coming for a ride? Pre-order yours today and discover that Ski-Doo feeling. Restrictions apply. Customer offers vary based on creditworthiness. See dealer for details.
Ah, that's better. Trade in the stresses of building a new home for relaxation. Visionary Homes Priority is giving you a stress-free building experience. Named the best home builder in northern Utah, Visionary Homes team will guide you seamlessly through the home building process. Call today, 435-228-4702, or visit visionaryhomes.com to learn more about upcoming communities in Nibley, Logan, and Smithfield. Visionary Homes, built for living, built for you.
When the bills from your accident pile up, it's time for you to consider professional legal counsel. Get the BEAR, Berenson and Caldwell.
I'm Amber Kizzer. Berenson and Caldwell helped me get through an auto injury accident. It was not a situation I could have handled on my own. I needed an attorney because I was being harassed. With Berenson and Caldwell, I didn't feel like I had to worry about things. I couldn't deal with the pressure and the stress of it, and he took all that away. I would absolutely recommend them. I would get the BEAR.
Visit BerensonLaw.com to instantly connect and receive a free case review of your injury. BerensonLaw.com.
After that last story, I feel like we've got to wrap up hour one here on a lighter note in some way.
That's always nice.
That's right. I miss this website, and I'm happy to announce that they are coming back. It's called Mental Floss, dormant for years, but is officially active again as of this week if you're ever looking for a distraction. But the reason I bring it up here as a final story for hour one, before we get to a bit of a legislative debriefing, courtesy of Senator Sandel and Senator Wilson in hour two, some really fun research out of Utah State University. USU has a group up there in a couple of different schools of study who have, I would say, not mounted a defense of social media and the internet, but at least a really skeptical approach, research-wise, to claims that it was going to ruin everything. And their latest batch of research is worth your eyeballs. It actually shows that some of the constant connectivity many were hand-wringing about 10 years ago as it first became a real thing, as we first started putting those cell phones with flat screens in our pockets, it turns out there is no evidence for this. In fact, some of the research published today shows that being constantly connected, keeping a constant flow of information live in your head at all times can actually improve memory, dexterity, and problem-solving skills. Check it out. A little counterintuitive research into social media and the internet age we live in. I've linked to it on our Facebook page. Senator Scott Sandel and Senator Chris Wilson weighed in on both broadband and water plans after legislative action was finalized at the end of the session.